Okay, we're going to create a cartoon geologic cross-section, but we are going to use on that cross-section the USGS lithologic patterns. There's a file to download on Canvas. There's also another file that shows each pattern, the number, which is what will show up inside Illustrator, plus the standard rock type that the symbol refers to. So you can see there's a bunch of siltstones, carbonates here, things with chert, cross bedding, get down into some volcanic and plutonic standard symbols and some metamorphic symbols. So once you've downloaded the rocks usgs.ai file, we want to go to Window, Swatches. I've already got it open here. And then in this lower left corner is the Swatches library menu. And we want Other Library. And then if you navigate to wherever you saved that file, we want to get the rocks usgs.ai swatch file. If we open that, now we have access to all those different swatches. And so if we drew a box, we could fill that box with these different symbols. So there's some cross-bedded coarse sand conglomerate. There's a cross-bedded sandstone. There's some kind of igneous rock. So as you can see, as I hover over these different patterns, the number pops up. And so this is where you need that other sheet to get the name of the lithology and how it relates to this number that shows up. But for our purposes, we don't really care what the rocks are that we're using. We're just making a cartoon, so you could use whichever symbols you like the most. Our goal for this exercise is to create a cartoon geologic cross-section, somewhat like this one. Don't copy this one or any of the other ones from the intro geology books. Just use your imagination. And so we'll need to create layers. We're going to want our layers to be uniform thicknesses. There's a lot of different ways that you could go about drafting a cross-section like this, and I will walk you through one of the ways. And so a key for today is going to be using layers to make sure we have the correct thing above or below. So you can see on the layer menu, if it's not there, you can go Window, Layers to turn it on. Right? We can, with the eyeball, we can turn layers on and off. We can lock them here so that we can't edit it, we can't draw it, we can't move anything around. We can expand the layer and we can see what is within it. So here there's just this one image that I pasted in. And you can also use these buttons here to select something and then shrink it. Well, I'll just delete it there. So we'll start with layer 1, and the way I like to do this is to just start building up some layers. So I'll make it so we have an outline there, and if we select the fill, we can put in a cross-bedded sandstone, select the rectangle tool, right? And this is where these pink guides will turn on, right? So if I move my mouse back and forth, I know I'm now aligned with this. I can click and hold and drag, and right there it shows up that I've hit the anchor. So if I let go, I know that it is the same size. So I will select this, and we went from a cross-bedded sandstone to a breccia. Sure. I'll add another layer here. I'm above there. Also, if I make a mistake and I haven't gotten all the way where I wanted to, I can move or I can resize my box. We're just creating a cartoon here, so it doesn't matter too much. So now I have a couple of layers. Maybe I would like to fault these layers. So there's one way to do that, where I can take the line segment tool. I can draw a line across here. And if we go to Effect, no, if we go to Object, Path, Divide Objects Below, you can see that my the line that I drew snapped to the limits of what was there. And we can also see that we've created new paths over here. And so I can just drag here. And so you can see that only this side of our fault is basically lit up in blue. And you can also see over here which ones we've selected. And so I will now go to Object, Group, and group these together so that when I move them around, they operate as one. We can do the same thing to this side. Object, Group. And now I have these two blocks. We can see in the layer menu that they have become groups, right? And we can turn off individual bits of the group. But the purpose here was to create a fault. So there we have a little thrust fault. And maybe there was a little bit of tilting that happened after that thrust faulting. So there's a set of layers, and now maybe there was a period of erosion that happened, and so you could just go and create another box and put that right on top. Where is it? Let's see. No. Put it there or something. Right. This is we've had erosion right down to this level, and then maybe we start new deposition of some other layer. Right. But quite often the way we depict erosional unconformities is with a squiggly line. One way to create that here is if we could take and make a line. So just using the line tool, and that's horizontal. There we go. I have a line, and if we go to Effect and Distort and Transform, and then use Zigzag, and I'll make these smooth. We'll add some more ridges. I'll make them a little bit smaller, maybe a few more ridges. There's a nice squiggly line. And if your line doesn't automatically show you what's going on, make sure you hit the preview button. We'll hit OK. So now, what you might want to do, your first instinct might be to take the pen tool, go to the anchor points on the end, click, and then start drawing the rest of the box. But if you do that, it will continue making these squiggly lines. So I'm going to stop that and undo. And so in order to create a rectangle where one of the sides is a squiggly line, we need to go to, so select the line, go to Object, Expand Appearance, and now we can take our pen, go to the little box at the end where it says anchor, and then we can add the rest of our box. There we go. Right. So now we have this object. We can put some kind of symbology on it. Right. And so one problem that you're going to notice now, if I bring this down, right, our pattern is clear behind this. So it's not opaque. It's transparent. So it looks like a mess. So a way around this is to copy this object, copy, and if we paste in front, then it will place it directly on top. So I've copied it. If I just do a Control V to paste, it pastes in the center of my window, right? But I want this to be aligned, and I want them to be perfectly aligned, so that's what the Paste in Front tool does. So now we can see that we have these two paths, right? And if we click on the little radio button here, it'll light it up. And so this is where layering becomes important. So if I select this top image, and I can go back to the fill, and I can give it a color, right? So now I have this, and it's filled in yellow, but that's not very useful because I lost my lithologic pattern. So I know that these two paths define this layer, right? But the problem is the layer with yellow is on top. So if I click here, I can drag this path, the lower path, up, and now it's on top. If I want to keep these two paths together, I can select them both, and I can group them. So now that they move together. So there we go. There's our erosion through there. And I can keep going, making some other units, right? If I drag them and they're too big, I can just resize them. Something is off here. There we go. Thick. Do this. Right, again, I have the problem that I can see what's behind there. So if I copy, paste in front and back in place, paste it in front, then I would take the rectangle that's in the back and I can give it color. There we go. That will hide everything that's behind there. So we have a tilting event, we have a faulting event, we have some an erosional unconformity, some layers that have taken place afterwards. So the next thing I need to put on is some kind of igneous intrusion. So maybe that's going to be some kind of plutonic body like this. Let me fix this. Set this back to default. So there we have some kind of intrusion, and I'll give it you can give the fill one of these igneous symbols. So again, we have our problem that it is transparent. We'll fix that, but the first thing I wanted to show you was quite often around these igneous bodies we'll have a metamorphic aureole from the heating of the country rock. And so to stylize that, what we could do is if we select our object, and let's make the stroke a little bit bigger, so the outer line, and then we can apply a gradient. Let's make sure we have the stroke selected, and we can apply a gradient. So maybe that'll open up this window. And so I want to create this gradient. Right, so I need to select the stroke, and I want a linear gradient, and I want to apply it. In this case, it would be across the stroke, so you can see how it changes in real time. Right. So we can change this gradient. We can click down here, and we can select a color for it. I don't know. I guess we'll go from purple to this pink here. We can also make this a little bit transparent, change the opacity, so that when we place it on top, we'll see some of the stuff behind it. And let me copy this and paste it behind there. And if we look at our layers, we can make sure we're working with the right things. Here's the one on top, here's the one on the bottom. Let's take the one on the bottom. We can use our eyedropper. We can grab that purple color. Maybe not. Let's see, what's going on? I've got this guy. Sure, that'll work. if I like that, but at least we can see what's going on here. So I have this top ellipse that has the pattern, this bottom ellipse that has some of the color on it. I will group them just so I can move them, and there's our intrusion. So our one on the top, I'm going to make the stroke invisible so that we can actually see that transparency there. So we can see that this is a bit of a, symbolizes how we have the contact Oriel around this. So you can draw things with the shapes. There's also the curvature tool here that you could come in. Whoops. Don't do that. Well, this is, again, take my own advice. We can do this several ways. Let's see, so, right, and there's the path that I just created with that curvature tool, which I don't want. So I'm going to select that and then delete it. We could make a new layer, right, so that creates this layer 2 up here. I can lock this lower layer so that I'm free to use my curvature tool here. So, right, I could freehand in, right, I could bend, and I'm going to create a little, there we go, this little volcano up there, sure. Close that off. It's a funky looking intrusion there. Oops. Maybe we could put a fill pattern on that, and if we edit, copy, edit, paste in front, and if we take the one behind it and give the fill a solid color, then it'll pop, and we can see it. So, create sedimentary layers, tilt them, fault them, create an unconformity, create an intrusion. It can be done freehand, it could be from one of these shapes. You can experiment with having a gradient on the outside to represent a metamorphic contact Oriel. There's another, there's ways to bend these. It gets a little bit more complicated, so we'll stay away from that for now. So right, we put these layers on it, or these paths on a different layer so that we could play with them without messing up the other things, but we can move them down. So this is key to make sure that your layers are in the right order, right? So if something looks wrong, check your layering, right? So we always want the younger things to be on top so that they cover up the older things. And then our last thing is to clean this all up. So we can create a rectangle. And so this is going to be the final size and shape of our bounding box. So we'll create a solid line on that. I'll make the fill transparent so we can see it. And I'll keep the little volcano in there. And then, so we will want to select everything. So we can drag across. We can go to our layer menu and click the little button here to select everything within this layer. And then we want to go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And it will clip everything to that box that you just made. It doesn't have to be a box. Well, for whatever you turn in, it needs to be a box. But it could have just as easily been clipped to a star shape. The other important part is to add some labels. So I always like to separate my text from my drawings. And so you can even label these. So this is images. This is going to be my text. And so we can lock the images, and we can now make text. We can grab our typing tool. Right, we can lock it, but also if it's not visible, it won't let you do anything, so we need to turn that on. Now I can label these things, right? This is part A. It's not super easy to see what's going on back there. You can change the font, change the size. Okay, so to label our boxes, right, this looks much better than this version here. So if all we do is click the type tool, click somewhere, right, this is unit A, it's pretty hard to see. So how do we fix this? So if we select whatever we typed, then we need to go to Type, Convert to Area Type, and then we use the Direct Selection tool. And if we click on any one of the anchor points that's on the outside of this box, you can see that it has changed from here, right? So our font, our text has this black fill, no stroke. We want to edit the box around it. So we select the anchor point, and now you can see they're both transparent, so we can turn that on, right? And it makes the background, but we don't need that necessarily. There we go. And you can adjust this if you'd like. Whoops, too small. So that it fits the letter. And then, so once you've done this, the easiest way to do the other ones is probably Control V, or right, copy and paste, and then you can just click on here and we can change this to B. So using that, we can label our different units.